Welcome to Open Minds Radio with Alejandro Rojas. Open Minds Radio is your UFO news authority, presenting evidence and the latest news regarding the UFO phenomenon. Here's your host, Alejandro Rojas.
Hello. It's like those guys. Goal! UFO! This is Open Minds Radio, your UFO news authority, and I am Alejandro Rojas. And today we have another wonderful show. It's going to be great and a fun time for everyone shall be had. We have Steve Bassett on from PRG, the Paradigm Research Group, and many of you are aware of this gentleman. And we talked about him last week because there is a White House petition that he had opened up on the We Are the People website, where the White House has put up this site so you can go put up your own petitions there. And if you get enough people to sign your petition, then the White House is supposed to respond. The limit used to be 5,000, where you had to get 5,000 signatures, and luckily for the petition people, it doesn't have to be someone in the country, which is interesting because it's our country, and otherwise the French, for example, we could have some sort of revolution. The Asians, because there's a lot of those guys out there, they could say, they put up a petition saying, close down your government and give all of your power to China. And then have all the Chinese people sign it, and you've got like 5 billion people signing this petition, and the White House is going to be like, oh no, we have to close down and give our power to China. So I don't know if that's a good idea. They should probably just take U.S. signatures, but they take them from all over the world, which also has helped Steve Bassett because, as people may know, the exopolitics movement is all over the world, and Steve Bassett is going all over the world doing talks about exopolitics, and he's going to be talking with us later today about his petition, which asks the White House to acknowledge that we're talking with extraterrestrials and that they're here, and we're down with ETT. And so that's what his petition's about. So we're talking to him about that. I've written about it on Huffington Post on our website and stuff like that. We talked about it last week. And some of the controversy, because can the president even know? If the White House wanted to know, and they went over, hello, military intelligence people, we wanted to know about UFOs. They'll probably get the door slammed in their face, and possibly Clinton and President Carter had this happen to them. The door slammed in their face. You don't have a need to know, and they were told to get the hell out of here. So that could happen to Obama and the White House, even if they decide to genuinely go pursue this subject that Stephen Bassett has put forth. But Bassett and I will talk about Robert Salas, who put one forth that just talks about UFOs, doesn't go the whole extraterrestrial route. So that's what we're going to be talking about on the radio show in our interview a little later. However, most of you probably want to hear the UFO news because you, like I, love our UFO news correspondent, Jason McClellan, who's here every week to talk news with us. And people, you're lucky because he's here again today. So, hello, Jason. Give us some news, baby.
Greetings, Alejandro, and hello, everybody. I am happy to give you more UFO news. This is your Open Minds news brief for Monday, October 17th, 2011. Well, a man photographed a UFO somewhere beyond the sea. It was actually over the sea, but
at least when I sing, I don't sing during the show. I should, though. Maybe we should make the show a musical.
You used to sing a lot during the show. You haven't lately.
Oh, man.
And you used to do a lot of phone dialing music as well.
We're going to have to do
I miss the phone dialing music.
Oh, that's right, phone dialing music.
But back to the story. A man photographed a UFO over the sea while on vacation near St. Austell, Cornwall, in England. On October 1st, 2011, the man was taking a leisurely stroll when he decided to snap a photo of the picturesque seascape. The photographer didn't notice anything unusual at the time, but when he returned home and uploaded his vacation photos from his camera to his computer, he noticed the UFO over the sea. The object in the photo was blurry, and this makes sense because the object not seen by the photographer when he was taking a picture would most likely have been moving very quickly for him not to notice it. But at initial glance, the UFO appears to be disc or saucer shaped. According to the Daily Mail, this UFO photograph was unveiled at the Cornwall UFO Research Group conference. In describing the photograph, the group's founder, Dave Gillum, pointed out that there appear to be 2 trails of water beneath the object, which look as though they are falling from it to the sea. He offered the possible explanation. It could be that the object had just emerged from the sea. The Daily Mail reports that a spokesman from the nearby Royal Navy Air Base confirmed that no military aircraft were in the area at the time. But the Metro points out there could be a much simpler explanation: a seagull. And when you look at the photo again, you can totally make out the seagull. And apparently some have suggested that this UFO is a seagull in flight, and those 2 trails beneath the bird are nothing more than doo-doo.
And they're white.
They are white, and anybody familiar with seagulls or other birds is familiar with the white.
Otherwise, it could be like a spaceship dropping like Space Invaders. You know those little wine bomb things that they dropped on you because they're little white lines.
You can see
falling.
the similarity too. If you look at the picture, you could see that.
There's some
little
music.
white lines. There you go.
Space Invaders. But it's a seagull.
It's a seagull. When you first look at the picture, you say, wow, there's a flying saucer. It sort of looks like a saucer. But
for the untrained eye.
When you look at it, you can see the shape of the chest. And
Yeah, definitely. And then you look at other seagull pictures. It's definitely a seagull. And it happens a lot with birds. And unfortunately, of course, when you're taking pictures, you don't notice things flying around, birds and bugs and stuff like that. So often people will, they get their pictures back, and what's that? And then, typically they're often, not always there, but often they're birds and
correct.
Bugs and
yep,
stuff.
those dive-bombing seagulls are up to no good.
Yeah, so the media had a lot of fun with the whole seagull poo UFO thing.
Yeah, there were a lot of headlines with poo in it.
Yeah. That's always fun.
That's disgusting.
It's fun, though.
I guess. Well, it was just 2 weeks ago that we reported that a major change was made to the Roswell International UFO Museum and Research Center's website. But now it appears that the museum has scrapped their plans for their biggest change of all, which would have been a new building. Groundbreaking took place 2 years ago on what would have been a new $25 million home for the museum near the heart of downtown Roswell. But according to KOB Eyewitness News 4, on Tuesday, October 11th, officials from the museum announced that the project has been scrapped, and the $2 million lot where the building was going to be constructed will now be sold. The museum will reportedly stay at its current location after securing, quote, not only a long-term lease, but an option to buy the property. And that's according to museum representative Jack Swickard. Plans are being developed to renovate the museum's existing building, and negotiations are reportedly underway to perhaps purchase neighboring buildings and somehow incorporate them into the overall museum. According to KOB Eyewitness News 4, an economic study shows that the museum brings in an estimated $57 million into the state's economy and attracts around 150,000 visitors each year. Absolutely. I mean, the Roswell incident is Roswell's economy.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of glad in a way because, of course, it would have been exciting for them to build this fancy new facility.
And it was pretty fancy.
But I've been watching this, and it's been years, and the money just isn't there. So I'm really excited about this because where they are is kind of fun. And I mean, it needs, I think, internally, it can have some, stand some renovation. But, it's in this old theater, and plus the front, the marquee and everything is so famous by now.
Right.
And it's a trademark. It's great to have them where they are. And now what was neat about this year in Roswell is they had acquired only just before the conference, which was really helpful, at least 1 or 2 of the storefronts that were nearby in this same building they're in. So they were able to have more speakers and some talks in these other rooms. So like the Kimbler stuff, the Roswell stuff we talked about where we had the pictures of Don Schmidt and Stan Friedman and Kevin Randall and Tom Carey all together, those were in this other room. So it was a great room, and she talked about how she might have the opportunity to buy more of those. And if she could buy this whole building, which is this whole block in Roswell, that would be awesome because then they can, focus that money will go a lot further into renovation as opposed to building a real fancy, huge place.
Well, don't speak too soon because the article, I believe, mentioned that part of their plan is if they can acquire all of these other spaces next to them, then they can move forward with building their gigantic, super nice museum like they had planned, the original design.
Well, I hope they do that in
the
the
same
building.
place. They would tear it down and build stuff, which I think would be a shame. But yeah, their current location looks awesome. I've never been there, but you certainly have.
Yeah, and if they can expand in there, because it's always fun to have, kind of a front that is, because it's, maybe they get bored with it. It looks like Old Town, a small town, Old Town, and the marquee of the big UFO. So it's neat looking, and that's a big draw for people like us that are urbanites and stuff, because it looks neat. And then when you go inside and you can have this really cool experience. And there's a lot of museums like that. Heard Museum from the outside, for example, doesn't look that great, which is a famous Native American museum here. But when you go inside, it's really laid out very nice and looks great.
I think the exterior appearance of the Roswell Museum is perfectly fitting.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about Roswell.
I think your mic went out.
My mic went out.
There you are.
Go. The Roswell incident, you're talking 1947. That to me doesn't say fancy modern
right, exactly,
museum.
because then it looks more like 1947.
Right.
You feel like you're more in the times of what happened, which is the whole point, because you walk in there and you've got all of this stuff from that age,
right?
And it feels like you're there, and you get the sense of what it was like to be there in 1947.
It makes sense, and hopefully this is all working out for the best, and they take advantage of it now that they can get a long-term lease and perhaps buy the building.
Yep.
That's excellent. Alejandro, I'm going to talk to you about something that I've been wanting to talk to you about.
Great.
And we've mentioned this the past 2 weeks on the show, but Live Science published an infographic a couple weeks ago on their website showing the top 10 states for UFO sightings. The National UFO Reporting Center's data was used to create the infographic, and the data represents sightings from 1994 through 2011. Well, you, Alejandro, compared that data with the UFO sightings reports from MUFON, and you published your results complete with charts on our website, openminds.tv, and Huffington Post, and you put this together in a really visual presentation, but you've got 3 different charts here showing hotspots. And you broke it down, explaining it, and I'd like you to explain it, because we have the UFO hotspots per report, and we have the top 3 being California, Texas, and Florida. Then you have the UFO hotspots per population, and the top 3 there are North Dakota, Arizona, and Colorado. And then lastly, we have UFO hotspots per Alejandro, and the top 3 there would be Arizona, Colorado, and Oregon. We have 3 different top 3s here. So talk me through this a bit.
All right. I'm glad you asked, because I know you're someone who reads articles, but not everybody does. Some people just look at the pictures. And if you're one of the picture lookers, all you got was what Jason just described. So you probably were so confused that you looked at the pictures, you thought they were neat, and moved on, which is great, because picture lookers, unfortunately, probably aren't that into details anyways, because they never get them just by looking at the pictures and not reading the text. But there's a lot of them out there. So for the picture lookers, or for those of you who like to listen to the radio show and don't go to the website, but you better go to the website. I'll explain this. Yeah, what I decided to do, since they did their infographic, was kind of do my own, but with MUFON's data. So the first graph, I wanted to find out, well, is it similar to what they got on the Life Science with the New Fork material? And it was very similar. In fact, I put those 2 together, and the only differences were, for instance, Illinois is a little bit lower on the MUFON list and up on the New Fork, but it's still very close. It's number 11. It's not in the top 10, but it's very close to the top 10 for MUFON. There are little changes like that. He is in Oregon.
Right.
Steve Davenport. So
in Washington.
Oh, I think you're right. Washington. So Washington, for instance, is about 14th on MUFON, but it's second on his list.
Right.
And I think that's probably because more people in Washington know about him. He gets a lot of press out there.
You're right.
Because he lives in a silo. So, he gets a lot of pressure about living in a silo and running a UFO thing. So people report to him probably more than MUFON. Whereas Colorado, which is where MUFON is, and they get more press there, more people report to MUFON. So just some of those differences. Otherwise, it was very similar. Then I pinpointed it more to 2011 to see what was happening there. Really, it's about the same when you look at reports overall, what states are getting UFOs. And it stays the same. However, when you look at this, you see a lot of the states with the highest populations in the top of the list. So because they have more people, it seems they have more sightings. Right. So what I wanted to do was break it down to, well, how many places are getting more sightings per person? Because that might really indicate where the hot spots are. And that was the second graph, so per person. So for instance, North Dakota, they only have 670,000 or so people. And so they were getting 3.4 sightings per 100,000 person, which is the highest. However, we learn in stats class that if you don't have a sample size of 30 or more, then you should probably throw it out. And because they only have 23 reports as opposed to a California with like 300 plus reports, that data is probably not as accurate as to whether or not they may be a hotspot or not. Because, of course, one sighting can throw that off.
Right.
So huge.
And is very, very cool seeing you do this with the population, taking that into consideration, because you did bring up states that weren't recognized before, like North Dakota and Alaska. Wasn't Alaska number 4 on that one? Yeah. And that's crazy. But go ahead with your next one. And
Alaska really only had 17. Wyoming had 13. They came to the top because they don't have much of a population. So if they take, for instance, if Wyoming would have had 2 less, they would have dropped a lot further. So I took all those that had 30 or less out to figure out, okay, what are most likely the hot spots? And what rose to the top was Arizona, Colorado, Oregon, Indiana, Missouri, Kentucky, Nevada, Kansas, Michigan, and Connecticut, which is pretty interesting. I think a couple of the interesting things are, I think you can really pinpoint these states more likely as a hot spot because this is per population. And these are places that have a fair amount of reports. And I found this before when I looked at this data a couple years ago, that it was very similar to this. So very interesting. Of course, I've been in Arizona and Colorado. We talked about that, I think, last week, so that was kind of funny. But it was also kind of funny because I received a message from my buddy, Chuck Zukowski, who's been on the show before. And his sister is the state director for MUFON in Missouri, and he was looking at information she had and he had, and he saw that there's a lot of sightings between Colorado and Missouri, and he saw that also some cattle mutilation reports that he's investigated in Colorado were all along the 37-degree line, latitude line. So, and my map kind of correlated with what he saw. So that was kind of interesting too. But I think here you can really have the hot spots for what it's worth. Interesting enough, though, California and New York, some of the places, of course, with the highest populations that were towards the top, really drop down when you go per population. The hard part is that California is so big.
Right.
I think New York, we really don't have as many sightings per person, so it's not maybe a hot spot. California, if we could regionalize California by South California, North California, or maybe Mid-California, we may find some part of California as a hot spot, but unfortunately we can't do that. So California and even Texas drop off. But yeah, it's really interesting that right in the heart of the country we have something. Now, the other problem is there are so few reports that for every UFO sighting that someone actually goes and finds MUFON or NUFORC, which isn't, if you go to the website and put in UFO sighting, you may be able to find something. But someone has to be pretty, they have to have a reason to do that. And a lot of people see something and they tell their buddies, maybe they even go to the media first before they would try to go look for a reporting center. So most sightings probably don't go reported to MUFON or NUFORC,
right,
or even the media. So that kind of throws a hitch in all of the data too. So are these really more UFOs in Arizona and Colorado and Kansas and Missouri and Kentucky and Indiana than there are in the rest of the country? It's hard to say, but at least there seems to be a trend of more reports per person in those areas.
Well, I enjoyed looking at your charts, and I did read your articles
Pretty colors.
about it. But thank you so much for putting that together. I know that was a lot of work. You spent a
It's
long
fun, though.
time on that.
It's important.
Yeah.
I mean, MUFON, there's a lot of people out there, and they're getting data and getting information, and, you know, they've got the great database. Same with Newfork. It's a lot of hard work to get this information and this data. And this is what it was for, to try to put it together and figure out the trends to see what's going on with these reports.
Well, good job.
Thanks.
In other news, residents in Shanghai, China, were bewildered by a multicolored UFO in the night sky on Monday, October 10th, which was last week. According to a television station, witness stated, "I feel curious about the object. I don't know what it is. It can't move like a plane and can change colors into green and red alternatively." But the UFOs were later identified as large kites equipped with hundreds of colored LED lights. Did you watch the video of this?
Yeah.
They're kind of crazy. I'm glad that this was a news report that showed it at the end, because when you watch it in the sky, it's just kind of amazing to see, because all you see are these LEDs changing color and kind of pulsing downwards. It looks really cool.
It looks super cool.
But on the ground, you see it's just a triangle kite and has this round set of lights in the middle.
Yep.
Looks crazy from the sky.
Yeah, it's really fun. And if you knew how to do, like Chuck, he knows how to, he's got a computer program where he can put lights together and do weird stuff like that.
And a lot of people are doing that. That's becoming pretty normal now. A lot of this night flying using either, remote controlled airplanes, kites, things like that.
Yeah.
But really adorning them with these LED lights that you can program and flying them at night is really becoming popular.
It's fun. Of course, it throws another wrench in our system here when we're trying to look for UFO reports, but that's just what you deal with when technology improves, I guess.
Yeah. Well, in other news, a photographer in Milan, Italy, recently captured multiple mysterious UFOs on camera. According to Mexican journalist and TV personality Jaime Maussan, on Monday, September 19th, Antonio Urzi was taking some test shots with a camera and a telephoto lens when he noticed a strange object in the sky. According to Urzi, the object appeared to be a flying sphere, but with his telephoto lens, he was able to see much more detail. The series of 11 photographs shows a saucer-shaped craft with a sphere-shaped object centered on the bottom of the craft and 3 smaller sphere-shaped objects around the larger sphere. This object strongly resembles a well-known UFO photograph by George Adamski that was taken in 1952. The sequence of photos also shows smaller independent sphere-shaped objects accompanying the larger object. Some of the photos show only one of these spheres moving around the larger craft, while other photos show at least 2 small spheres in the sky at the same time as the larger craft. Urzi claims that after snapping the 11 photos, his camera stopped working, and then the UFO and the spheres disappeared. And the photos were analyzed briefly by somebody who works with Urzi, and he said he couldn't find any sign that the photos had been tampered with or brought into Photoshop or anything. Urzi, if you're familiar with him, he's taken hundreds, thousands according to some people, of photos and videos of UFOs in Italy, but also around the globe, and he claims to be followed by UFOs. His photos and videos are highly controversial, as well as the Adamski photos are, if you're familiar with those.
Yeah, it's a tough case. I mean, we've covered it in our magazine because he's got these phenomenal pictures.
Amazing pictures.
These amazing pictures of UFOs flying over his house. Are they really? I've got a video up where I was with him and I took this video of a UFO, but I think it was a balloon over Mexico. So, yeah, it's just so difficult to say with these. And it's, of course, this one is so strange because it looks so much like the classic Adamski UFOs.
And I don't know, I can't recall seeing that any time.
Not recently.
Yeah, it's been.
There were other people other than Adamski who took those pictures, though. Mm-hmm. But that was during the time, typically during the time that he was seeing.
And this Adamski-like UFO looks similar to the other crafts that he's photographed in this detail. It just seems to have additional orbs at the bottom of the craft.
Yeah.
So kind of interesting. Well, speaking of actual orbs, 2 orb UFOs were recently recorded on video in the sky over Missouri. The Epoch Times provided this description of the video. The brightly glowing objects are traveling low in the evening sky. They fly around each other, appearing to almost collide before descending into the distance and disappearing behind some trees. A husband and wife witnessed the glowing UFOs together, and the wife recorded the incident on her iPhone. The husband then submitted the report of their sighting to MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, which included the video. The video has since been uploaded to YouTube, along with the following description from the husband that submitted it with his MUFON sighting. He said, "My wife witnessed 2 glowing orbs in the sky while she was driving down our street. She had an incredible video that she shot from her iPhone through the windshield. The lights spun around each other, then descended to the ground. They went behind some trees and out of view. She is very reluctant to share this experience, so I'm writing this for her." Some have suggested that the mysterious lights in the video could be remote-controlled airplanes, while others have suggested the video is nothing more than a hoax. However, no official identification has been made.
Yeah, really interesting video. Maybe CGI. You know what it reminded me of?
What's that?
And I think it's a video that doesn't get enough attention personally, even though it was the one that we have from Las Vegas that we have on our YouTube.
The one with roller coaster?
Yeah.
Behind the roller coaster?
And this is one I got from Greeley when I did a talk in Greeley, Colorado a couple years ago, and some guys brought this video to me, and they were in Las Vegas, and there's a weird white light flying over the strip where they were over by New York, and then it kind of zooms down and does this weird stuff, and in this video you have these 2 lights zooming all over the place. If it's real, it's incredible.
Yeah.
But it should be looked at closer because we saw some things that might indicate it to be CG.
Mm-hmm.
But someone needs to take a look at that because it's a very interesting video.
Yeah, it's a great video. I definitely watched it quite a few times today. And you're right, there are a couple indications in there that could be problematic, but, it's difficult to tell. These are balls of light in the sky, and we've seen so many orb videos this year.
And one good thing this one has, where there's been problems in the past with CGI, is when it flies behind trees, you can see it through the leaves once in a while.
Right.
Whereas there are some other videos where that didn't happen, which was a big indication that it was not
and
real.
And being lights in the sky, we'll say this is 100% definitely not Chinese lanterns.
Yeah, not Chinese lanterns.
And this is not flight planes.
No.
And this is not like the Red Bull Air Force, the skydivers with flares on their feet.
You had another idea of possibly RC planes with LEDs. It could possibly be that.
That's possible.
Because they can fly pretty crazy, but even that's would be maybe a little bit of a stretch because they're moving so fast and up in the air and down again.
And again, some of these issues with the lights and where they're moving in front of or behind of, it kind of rules out RC to me. But
yeah,
it's difficult to tell. I mean, we have no idea what it is. It's a fun video to watch, so definitely check it out.
Yeah, CG or possibly a real phenomena.
Pretty exciting. Well, Alejandro, that is it for the news for today. Remember to check out all of these stories and many, many more at openminds.tv, your source for UFO-related news. I'm Jason McClellan, your Open Minds news correspondent, and you have been briefed. Back to you, Senor Alejandro.
All right. Thank you, Jason. A couple other articles that I want to tell you about on our website. Just recently, in fact, just yesterday, or no, this was Friday, there's one on the Mexican government and the 2012 Mayan calendar. And Antonio Huneez has done some more research into these claims that the Mexican government has given this documentary maker, who's the son of Raul Julia, this data that's never seen before that claims that the Mayans were talking to extraterrestrials and stuff. So Antonio dug in to find a lot more information, and it's a 2-parter, and the first part was posted on Friday. So that's a very interesting story. And then, like I said, I'll be writing some more on the reporting in that 37th latitude line and if there's significance there. So keep an eye on our website, and hopefully I'll get on the show Chuck Zukowski and his sister Debbie Ziegelmeyer soon, because she's in Missouri, to talk about the UFO videos that and the other sightings that have been going on in these areas, because there's been some good ones that have gotten some news. However, without further ado, let us go ahead and speak to our featured guest today, Mr. Steve Bassett.
All right. I am very excited to have for the first time, actually, I think, on the show, Stephen Bassett from the Paradigm Research Project. Hello.
Hi, Alejandro. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, great to have you on, especially at this time. I'm sure you're really excited about the petition.
Meaning the disclosure petition.
Right.
Yeah, it's an interesting project that PRG launched on September 22nd. And it's really the first time, I think, that we really had something quite like this. Let me give your listeners the background. right now there are petitions all over the place. There are petition websites where you go and you can sign petitions and put up petitions and what have you. There are petitions in play by organizations such as MoveOn.org regarding various events like Occupy Wall Street. Some of them have as many as 180, 200,000 signatures. That's possible because the organizations behind them, like MoveOn, have spent millions of dollars developing email lists that are many millions in size. And to what extent these petitions impact, it's hard to say. They certainly bring people together. They're a focus. But to what extent they impact government, we're not sure. What's different about what's going on here is that the White House itself initiated a petition process on the White House website, whitehouse.gov, which receives many, many millions of visitors every month. I need to check to see how many, but it's a big number. And this was done as part of their open, transparent government campaign promises and change. You can believe in promises, whatever, trying to be more democratic, all well and good. So they initiated a petition process in a section called We the People. The links to it are right on the very top page of the White House website. Now, 192 petitions have been submitted since September the 22nd. What's different about this particular process is that the White House has stated on the site that any petitions which receive a certain number of signatures within 30 days of their being posted will be actually formally reviewed by White House staff assigned to this, and a formal response will be returned by the White House or by the appropriate entities within the Obama administration. More importantly, all of these petitions are, in fact, sitting on the website. They're right there for anyone to review anywhere in the world. And so consequently, they're getting a lot of exposure that other petitions out there in the internet hinterlands might not get. And then finally, they did something interesting with this, Alejandro. They are not limiting signatures to just the people in the United States or United States citizens. Anyone in the world can sign these petitions. Okay. So when PRG learned about this at the end of August, it realized it had an excellent opportunity here to get attention to, draw attention to, and focus on the ET disclosure movement. So PRG pre-promoted the petition as the White House had requested that people do. And so within an hour of it going, the site going active on September the 22nd, a disclosure petition was up on the website where it remains. Now, what is the disclosure petition? It reads exactly as follows. We, the undersigned, strongly urge the President of the United States to formally acknowledge an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race and immediately release into the public domain all files within government agencies and military services relevant to this phenomenon. This is an unambiguous, straightforward statement. It leaves not a lot of room. If you do not think there's an extraterrestrial presence, if you do not think that the UFO phenomena and other phenomena are in fact have an ET origin, then there's no reason to sign this petition. But if you do, there's a good reason to sign it. And that was designed that way. There's one other petition up there now, which is similar but somewhat softer language.
Right.
These petitions have achieved, both petitions will achieve a formal response from the White House.
Now, one question is, of course, your wording is much stronger. You go all the way to saying an extraterrestrial presence as opposed to asking for them just to, which previous initiatives have been just looking into the UFO phenomena. You go all the way to acknowledging an extraterrestrial presence. Why did you take that extra step? What?
Because it's true.
Uh-huh.
The extraterrestrial presence is a fact. It's been established through 60 years of research by a whole lot of people, There are witnesses coming forward. There's mounds of evidence, so it's a fact. And every time you step back from that fact, excuse me, sorry, every time you step back from that fact, you're diminishing the activism. You're diminishing the efficacy. It's a compromise. Now, there are people that want to split hairs on this and say that, well, maybe they're not from another planet. Maybe they're from another dimension, or maybe they're from the future or the past. Hey, look, I think extraterrestrial will sufficiently cover all three of those possibilities. And certainly, it doesn't really matter. All three would be absolutely extraordinary and requiring full engagement by all segments of our society. Mm-hmm. So I don't really split that hair. The extraterrestrial presence is a fact. Millions of people know this already, and every year millions more come to that understanding. And so it's very important to state the fact directly and not back away from it, and that's why the petition is worded that way.
Okay, and just on some of the evidence that you talked about, that there is a lot of evidence that's been gathered by researchers for a period of time, what do you think is the best evidence, some of the best evidence, when you think of this? Like if, let's say, a politician was to say, well, Steve, what is this evidence that there are extraterrestrials? What would you tell them?
Well, many years ago, 30 years ago, back in the 80s, J. Allen Hynek, the great researcher and astronomer who left the government program he was hired to participate in order to, quote, debunk the UFO issue to the American people, left it, reversed his position, founded CUFOS, Center for UFO Studies. When he was frequently asked this question, he had a same response. Where do you want me to back up the truck? It's not so much best evidence. Any single piece of evidence can be wrong. In other words, you can commit a heinous crime, such as, say, a murder, and a senator could come forward at your trial and state matter-of-factly he or she saw you do it. And that would be pretty impressive. And yet that senator could be bold-faced lying. So there is, and photographs can be faked, video can be faked. It is the totality of the evidence. 60 years of accumulation of videos and photographs and sighting reports by the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people submitting written accounts to researchers of their contact experiences from around the world. Witnesses of high rank and station coming forward and talking about events and evidence that they have been involved with while working for the government. This is a huge amount of evidence, which in its totality is absolutely beyond the reasonable amount. This is the way people need to think about this. They constantly look for the smoking gun, and that's not the way science or the world works. When you go into a trial, you're convicted on the totality of the evidence. And the totality of the evidence for an extraterrestrial presence, probably from other planets, is overwhelming. And that's the way you have to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Now, just kind of along the same, because I agree with you. Yeah, you're right. Court's all about the totality. In fact, I was just watching a show last night, I think it was, about the arsenic, the guy who was sending the arsenic around, and how they tried to try someone, and that they emphasize you have to look at the totality of the evidence as opposed to all of these tiny pieces, which is something that isn't done in this field like you're talking about. However, sometimes, especially in science, semantics, of course, gets really important, and then when it relates to politics. And so I can understand your definition of extraterrestrial covering some of these other possibilities. But sometimes that, and I'm sure you've ran into this, using that term can kind of scare some people away, such as in the realm of science, because it feels like coming to a conclusion before they've done the research. What would you say to someone who felt that way?
Are you, when you say using the term, are you referring using the term exopolitics or
extraterrestrial?
Well, the point is the research has been done. Now, is it all the research that have been done? No. Has the government revealed what its research has uncovered? No. Has the government deliberately tried to undermine the efforts of citizens in this? Yes. Are we under a truth embargo designed to contain and minimize the effects of citizens on this issue? Yes. Mm-hmm. Does that make it tougher? Sure, absolutely. I mean, it's like a trial where you have been indicted on a crime, and you go to trial, and lo and behold, the government, the prosecution, is deliberately manipulating the evidence, undermining your own defense in order to convict you. That's, of course, illegal. People will go to jail for that. That's called prosecutorial misconduct. So what we have here is a 60-year effort, citizen science effort, to understand and establish the basis for what was called the UFO phenomena. I call it extraterrestrial phenomena. And the entire time, the government was deliberately attempting to interfere and undermine that effort. Well, of course, not revealing what it knows. This is an extraordinary situation. And so one of the reasons why even today you have people that are saying, well, we don't really think it's been proven yet, is because they don't, first of all, in almost every case, they haven't really reviewed the totality of the citizen science evidence. And they've also accepted a great deal of what the government had to say about this. So they're simply misinformed. Now, we get misinformed all the time. What's important about this kind of misinformed is that it's coming from the government itself, which, of course, is not what we want. It is bad gut policy, and it could lead to very awful consequences. And so the disclosure movement is a political movement. It's not a science movement. It is, first and foremost, trying to recognize the reality of this truth embargo, the implications of it, and to present the information and the issue to the public with that factored in, right? In other words, we're going to the public and saying, look, this is the truth of the matter. The government has tried to undermine that truth. You need to understand you've been the target of that process, this truth embargo, which has made it that much more difficult for you to get the picture. We're trying to clarify that for you.
Right.
So that's what makes it unusual. Again, it's like being in a trial where the prosecution is doing everything it can to illegally to undermine your own case. And so you have to operate on a little different basis there, which is to say this is now a political problem. Now, more science should be done, and I'm sure that with plenty of science it'll be done, plus we need to know everything the government has learned. But right now, the reason this issue is not resolved is not because, quote, there isn't enough scientific evidence. It's because there needs to be a change of policy on the part of the United States government, and I say that meaning the national security structures, which have directed this policy and managed this issue and have for some time.
Gotcha. Now, of course, as a political tool also, which is what this site was all about, is getting to what the people are interested in and what people want to know about from the White House. This has certainly gained some ground that way. What do you expect might be the answer that you receive?
Well, look,
I guess
here's where things stand. Forgive me. I'm trying to get set up here. Just a second. Here's where things stand. There have been 192 petitions submitted to the White House website for the We the People initiative. The disclosure petition has received approximately 9,800 signatures. It is 21st out of 192 in terms of signatures that have been obtained. That's very respectable. Not a big number, though, but it's respectable. So people are going to the White House website. They are seeing this petition as part of this process. They're seeing that it's getting a respectable number of signatures, and that's a good thing. The threshold needed to be responded to was 5,000. The disclosure petition got that in 4 days.
Right.
So there will be a formal response. The other petition that addresses this issue is right under 5,000. I'm quite sure it'll reach that threshold. Since October 5, the White House increased the threshold to 25,000, which was a mistake. It's too many. They probably shouldn't have increased it to more than 10, which they may correct. But it's not retroactive. So the disclosure petition will receive a response. What that response will be, I can't imagine. But there will be a response, and, of course, we will heavily publicize it and discuss it around the world. But what I'm really interested in is how many signatures can we get on this petition? Not having the vast sums of money that a MoveOn.org has, or the National Rifle Association has, or AARP has, but having the access to the social media like Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, YouTube, email lists, and websites. Can we share the link to this petition sufficiently to gather a lot of signatures from around the world? The number of people that believe that there is an ET presence is roughly 50% in most of the industrialized world, and probably around 40% in the non-industrialized world. That is a huge number, between 2 and 3 billion people worldwide. So all we're asking is how many are willing to sign a petition asking the government to acknowledge this truth and obviously start revealing information about it.
Mm-hmm.
The link is on a number of websites. There is an information site for this petition at disclosurepetition.info where you can see media coverage, you can get links for your website, banners rather, where you can see the short link to the petition, right, which is wh.gov/G_KC. K says the last 2 letters KC are capitalized. Or you can simply Google disclosure petition, and it comes right up at the top. I think the short link is number 2. Or you can go to the White House, whitehouse.gov, simply go to the petition area, We the People, look for it, register, and sign it. So in order to register, what you do is you have to give them an email address, and you give them a little other information. The zip code is optional, and they will publish your signature as first name and last initial, which is a compromise. I would prefer both names, but they're going with first name, last initial. They send you a password, by the way, and then you use that to sign in. You have to register with the site and sign in. Then you can sign any petitions you want. So we're trying to spread that link, and it is getting spread around, and there is some media coverage.
Yep.
I've been interviewed by the Wall Street Journal. We're waiting on that article. There's been articles in the Huffington Post. You wrote one of them yourself.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we will see this link spread, and we can get this number up. I would certainly like to see it pass 20,000, which is definitely doable by the end of the month. This is where my interest really lies, getting that signature count up so that this issue has a very respectable showing relative to the other petitions on that White House website. And then we'll see where we'll go from there.
Cool. So some of the questions about the White House, just from what you know or from what you've been able to gather, do you know if Obama's aware of the issue, if he, at least in any sort of official capacity?
Oh, Obama is aware of the issue. I mean, my Lord, you can't hardly pick up the news or on the web, even on news networks and so forth, the issue comes up. I mean, he's well aware of the issue, but whether or not he's been given a briefing, we don't know. What his personal view is, we don't know. But the issue, of course, is out there. It's been out there a long time. It's not true. And it's getting harder and harder to blow it off.
Right.
So it's going to be very interesting to see what the Obama administration does. But the reason for doing this is not that, oh, gee, the Obama administration is going to read that petition and go, well, I guess we better disclose. The reason for doing this is showing this issue. It's getting the awareness, increasing the awareness, it's getting media coverage. Also, it's very notable to keep in mind that the White House website is not just any website. It is the website for the most powerful nation in the world. It gets tens of millions of visitors every month. Anybody can go there, including members of the military intelligence complex, even the ones operating in the deepest classified zones, other heads of state. Anybody can go to that website, and obviously they can see that petition. And so it's being read, if not signed, by people from all over the world. This is significant. So the petition is a message not just to the administration, but to the world itself.
Right.
This issue is real, and it's not going to go away, and it will be dealt with. You cannot continue to deny the million-pound elephant in the room indefinitely. At some point, you're going to have to acknowledge it. Because that's very much what this petition is about.
Yeah. And the reason I ask that, and because I think it's interesting in that the intention, of course, of the White House opening up this site was to get an idea of what Americans are thinking about, what they think is important, what they want the White House to do, take action on, or to speak about. And so it's not like it would be certainly disingenuous for them to shy away from anything that is a popular issue, such as yours, on the site.
It's complicated. It's not exactly clear what the White House motivations are. They are gathering a lot of emails addresses, which could be politically useful. But the fact is that they have not significantly promoted this.
Mm-hmm.
There have been articles. If you Google White House petition, you will see articles about it. But the president has never mentioned it, and no ads have been taken out. So it's like they're deliberately under-promoting it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can assure you, if the president were to mention this in a press conference, the number of petitions would probably go from 190 to 1,000.
Right.
And the number of signatures would lead 10, 15, 20-fold. They haven't done it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting.
Yeah.
So as a result, when you look at the petitions, there are many, many issues that are not represented there that you would expect to be represented. Now, not surprisingly, the two most represented issues are marijuana law reform, and gun issues. Not surprising there. The issue with the most petitions is, in fact, the reform of marijuana laws. I think there are 12
Mm-hmm.
petitions out of 192. Of course, nobody's surprised that there's a great interest in that.
Right.
And nobody's surprised at huge dissatisfaction with the war on drugs, which is an American catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not going to surprise anybody in the administration. The disclosure petition is another matter. Now, there is one possibility here, which is remote. I don't know how likely it is, but it's worth mentioning. And that is the White House, when it comes to certain issues, the top politicians, like the president and so forth, even senators, for instance, if they were to proactively speak to an issue, it would immediately, a very controversial issue, it would immediately draw a lot of attention and would attract a lot of attention. And then people would immediately be coming at them saying, why are you talking about this? Why are you bringing this up? Do you think this is true? And so forth. And which is one of the reasons why they don't do that very much, right?
Mm-hmm.
They talk out of both sides of their mouths. They avoid the controversial stuff. They stick to talking points, the usual stuff. But one of the aspects of this process, particularly if it grows and they promote it a little bit, where we really get some serious signature counts, is that, well, if someone puts up a petition, say for disclosure, and it gets 20,000 signatures, and you've agreed in advance, without knowing what the issues are going to be, that you're going to formally respond, essentially your response to that issue is not proactive, but rather you're simply honoring the agreement that you made when you set up the initiative. And so, in a way, it gives the administration license to respond to an issue that normally they would not respond to because they would not want to proactively engage it, right? Of course, this is where the press is supposed to do their job. I mean,
right.
The list of issues that the press should be challenging all administrations on is a very long list, and the press just doesn't do it. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know where the media is going, but overall, they about 5-10% of the questions they ask are worth a damn, and the most important questions are never asked. So the media is not doing its job. So is it possible that the White House is using this to draw in certain issues that will then and then have to respond to them, thus opening up a door they otherwise would not want to open?
Yeah.
So I can assure you that every word in the response to the disclosure petition will be carefully considered.
No, that makes a lot of sense, that it would be a political strategy in order to get some momentum to pet project something they want to address, but they want to have an excuse. Well, the American people brought this up to the White House on our We the People, and that's why we're addressing this issue. But Obama did this before when he was coming into office. He had something set up, and you participated in that as well. And on
yes.
that program, marijuana, taking that subject in particular because it's so high, the legalization of marijuana, it was very high on that one also. And unfortunately, that's one also that has been ignored. It's really, if they're asking the people what they think is important and they want to address these things, it is disingenuous, unfortunately, for them to not address these things when the public is saying, hey, this is, you asked, and I'm telling you, but you're ignoring me.
That was a different situation, though. I mean, let's compare.
Yeah.
That was, again, an effort to engage the public, to be democratic, but it was during the transition period after the election, the 77 days between the election and the inauguration. The transition team, which interestingly enough was led by John Podesta,
right,
had a website called change.gov, and as an exercise in democracy, they invited people to submit issues that others could vote on, so they could get an idea of what people were interested in or what they cared about as Obama considered, quote, setting up his team and beginning his term as president. All well and good. There were many hundreds of issues, and they got a lot of votes. There were more votes and more issues than you're seeing right now on the petition process at the White House website, but then they promoted it more back then. But that was the transition period. This is 3 years into the administration. It's the beginning of what is going to be a brutal campaign. It's going to cost a couple of $2 billion at least for the next presidency. The president is in trouble. His approval ratings are low. No president has, no sitting president has ever won a second term with ratings at this level. Of course, there's still a lot of time. So putting this in play now is a much different situation. And I think that's one of the reasons why they have under-promoted it, because frankly, if they were to promote this, if he were to get the press conference he was at just a few days ago, and simply said, I'd also like to mention that we are initiated a petition process on the White House website. We're seeking petitions on issues of importance of people, and people may sign them, and we will respond. Had he done that, the whole thing would have exploded. So it's almost like they're now playing their cards fairly measured. This has, there's trial balloons being sent up all over the place here. I'm not ultimately sure where this is going to go. Right now, as you know, there's a lot of turmoil. There are petitions out there regarding certain issues that have hundreds of thousands of signatures, but of course they're not on the White House website. So we're in the early stages of a lot of things. I mean, look, there's a lot of political turmoil in America and in the world. But one thing we can say is that the disclosure issue is represented. It is there. There are 2 petitions on that site amongst the 192. Both are going to be responded to by the administration. We have put it in play, and we will continue to drive that petition and seek as many signatures as possible. Again, if the word would spread, if people would get motivated and put some major numbers behind that disclosure petition, I guarantee you it would become an international news story. That the petition right now with the most signatures is one of the marijuana petitions, and I think it sits at around 53,000. So we have about 20% of the top petition. Now, believe me, I mean, there's enough people out there that want the marijuana laws reformed. I mean, that petition could have 1 million signatures. But again, not enough people know that this thing has even happened on the White House website, which is why I'm doing media. I've already done about 30 interviews, and I'd probably do 30 more before the mid-November. I'm doing what I can to promote not only the disclosure petition, but this initiative by the White House. Look, it's a good idea, but if the people don't participate, it will have less impact. So how many people out there want the truth about the ET presence? How many people are ready to see this truth embargo ended? Are you willing to put your first name and last initial behind that? If so, you need to go to whitehouse.gov, go to We the People, register, get a password, sign in, and sign the disclosure petition, or go get the link off of disclosurepetition.info or at paradigmresearchgroup.org. The link is turning up all over the place, wh.gov/G_K_C, and sign it. And as the numbers grow, I assure you there'll be more media, and as more media turns up, there'll be more signatures, and we may have ourselves a real strong statement. That's the goal. It's only been approximately a 20 days since the petition went up, all right? So, it's just 3 weeks. We have time. So,
Right.
Again, I'd like to see people get involved.
Yeah, so your primary goal of awareness is what you're looking for, something I think you've definitely achieved, which is great, and will continue to achieve. And I know this isn't your primary goal, but I'm just out of curiosity, I was curious about your thoughts on some of these other aspects. What if, another what if scenario, Obama took a look at this and he said, wow, this is interesting. You know, Americans are really into this subject. I want to find out more. Do you think he'd be able to, especially considering, and do you feel, I guess the second part of this question would be, that that's what Clinton did when he was president? There's a story, of course, of him telling Webster Hubbell, who is going to be the Deputy Attorney General, go look into UFOs, and he kind of even alludes to that. I tried to look into UFOs but didn't find anything. Do you think he's telling the truth, and do you think Obama could be more successful?
This is a very, very complicated question. A lot happened in the Clinton administration. It's a huge story, and it's starting to get out. It'll be written up in my book, hopefully, which comes out early next year. But it doesn't really matter what Clinton wanted to know or knew or wanted to know. And he did try to learn some information. He was not going to allow to be the disclosure president. Period. Wasn't going to happen.
He was not going to be the disclosure president, you said?
He was not going to allow to be. He was not going to be
allowed to be, even if he wanted to be.
Well, you know, if the military intelligence committees that manage this issue are not willing to cooperate with the president, it would be incredibly risky for the president to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
The president will go forward and say there's an ET presence, but then the military intelligence community don't back him up and won't provide him information. I mean, you're looking at the potential for massive constitutional crisis, huge, mess, and it would not be good. And so what is required and what we ultimately expect will happen is that either disclosure needs to be initiated by both the military intelligence community and the executive branch. Who will move first is hard to say. I think the military intelligence community is most likely to move first. But one way or another, some representatives of the president operating absolutely privately will at some point meet with representatives of the military intelligence management committees on the ET issue. And they will privately agree to go forward and disclosure will take place. That's why this petition is important. Because it's on the White House website, it's accessible not just to the White House staff, but to the CIA staff and the NSA staff and the DIA staff and everybody else in the classified world, as well as other foreign countries and their governing people. So it's just it's nicely positioned, location. So if Obama wants to respond to this, he wanted to initiate it. What he would have to do is he would have to send some private queries, probably in person, emissaries, as it were, down to the military intelligence community in a very discreet way, and ask if they would engage it and talk to them. This, as far as him demanding information, I don't think that works that way. And if he publicly did it, that would be interesting. But I'll say this. His response, whatever it comes to be, is going to be, I guarantee you, publicized around the world. I mean, PRG will make sure of that, but I think there's going to be plenty of help there.
Oh, yeah.
If there's any number of things that they could say in that response that would open the door. And so in other words, there's ways you can open the door without admitting anything, right? If I was the Obama administration, what I would do, if I wanted to see this take place, but was simply unable to unilaterally act on it, and keep in mind, one of the key advisors to the president is but not outside government, is John Podesta, the head of his transition team. John Podesta called for the release of all UFO files twice, in 2002, 2003, right? He supports the Coalition for Freedom of Information, which is, in fact, an organization created to, quote, advance the disclosure process. So what I would do is I would respond in such a way that the door would open for the media to come through. In other words, just give them just enough of an opening that they would go, hello, what? And they would come through. And then the media would suddenly start asking tough questions, and the administration would, I guess, be put into a corner where they have to discuss it. And at that point, things could go very, very quickly. So this is a possibility. On the other hand, they may just blow it off. They may come back with some basic response other than, I am not aware, we are not aware that there's any truth to any of this information, and therefore we see no basis to engage it. Now, that could also be interesting, because I can assure you that the public response worldwide to that is not going to be favorable, and it's going to attract a lot of attention. And
well, they've continued to do that, though, and that has not really had an effect. I mean, the Air Force continues to say that. CIA, they all have websites where they say that, and really nobody's, except for people like us, nobody's really paid attention or tried to call attention to it.
Well, it's one thing for the Air Force to release a standard response letter saying, we do not investigate this phenomena, and whatever this phenomena is, it does not pose a risk to the American people. It's another thing for the President of the United States, the executive branch, to respond and make a statement on the issue. That's a whole different matter. That is going to be worldwide news. All right?
Well, Clinton made that statement twice. I mean, there's a couple times where he said, I looked into it, I found out that there was nothing to it. He each time had the caveat that, usually jokingly, that maybe they're keeping even secrets from me. But, I mean, he did say, I didn't find anything to any of this.
That's not my recollection, Alejandro, and I'm paying pretty close attention here. Clinton never said that.
He said that twice. He said that to the Air Force. He said it both out of the country, actually, but he said it in Hong Kong, the video that I had with your story on the Huffington Post. And then, go ahead.
I'll have to review the Hong Kong video. The Ireland statement was a very interesting line, which he didn't have to say at all, but he indicated in a response to a query from a child that had asked him about Roswell. He said, well, I don't know if there's anything in Roswell, but I'd sure like to find out. Mm-hmm. As far as the Hong Kong statement, I'll release it, but many of these are formal statements by the White House. Gotcha. They're almost toss-offs. And allegedly, according to Stephen Greer, and I can't verify this, Sarah McClendon told him that Clinton told her that he would like to know about it, but he can't get the information. I can't verify that. And I knew her fairly well. Still, yeah. That's not a formal response from the president. This is going to be a formal response to the petition by the White House that will be sent out to every person that has signed the petition, as well as, of course, me, right? And that, and by the way, and this is 2011. This isn't 1993, right? Just 20 years later. In the last 10 years, over a dozen countries have released tens upon tens of thousands of UFO files, some classified, mostly not, into the public domain, and those files have been downloaded tens of millions of times around the world. Witnesses have come forward. There have been major press conferences. This is a different time. So all I can say is, whatever this response is, I assure you that PRG is going to do everything it can to make sure that as many people as possible know what this response is and to respond accordingly. And if it's a real blow-off, then what we may do is start up another petition on We the People based upon that response, making slightly different demands, and go out and try to get even more signatures. I mean, they've opened up a door here. Now, they can close it at any time. But if they're going to open up the door and you're an advocate and the issue is what it is, what this one is, you're going to go through that door and do everything you can, and that's what PRG is doing.
Yeah, that's great that you're taking advantage of that too, and that there's someone like you there to keep an eye on that. But you did say something that I thought was pretty shocking earlier. You said that you felt that the military intelligence community, right, which seems to be the people that really are holding the key to the information, and they decide whether it gets out or not, regardless of what any president wants. But what makes you think they would have any reason or will to put the information out? I think you said that you think that they would move and they would release information before the president.
Well, keeping in mind that we're talking about people that operate in extreme secrecy, there has been a consensus amongst a number of the activists and some of the researchers for a while, going back to late 1990s, 2000, that the consensus inside is probably in favor now of going forward with disclosure. But it's a consensus. In other words, it's a slight majority, that there's still going to be people that are opposed to it. And why would that be? Well, this might shock you, but it'll shock some people. The people that run and work in the national security realms are basically good American citizens. They're not evil. They're not Illuminati. They're not Satanists. They're military officers. They're intelligence officers. They're under declassification. They're paid well, but not extraordinarily well. I can assure you they're a hell of a lot more honest than most of the politicians in the country right now. And their job is to protect the national security and defend the Constitution. And that's what they do. And I believe that they, certainly in the last 10 years, have come to understand that the continuance of this truth embargo is in fact not in the national security's interest, that it is damaging the social contract and helping to feed the massive distrust which is growing day by day in America toward government by the people. And of course the polls show this. The numbers are rather phenomenal. It's amazing the country's hanging together. And so I think that given the right circumstances, possibly with the assistance of media, that this thing comes out and they make a move. But because they control the information, because they have the evidence, and by and large the presidents can't get at that information, they pretty much call the shots. Now, that in and of itself is something that the American people need to look at real seriously. Mm-hmm. Are they comfortable with this idea of having a massive national security secret world that controls huge amounts of information that the Congress and the President don't know about, and are therefore able to, quote, decide what gets told and what doesn't, and maybe even what policies take place based upon their control of the secret information? Is this what we want? Is this the government we want? I think most people don't want that, but they don't know enough to realize that that's exactly what they've got. Now, again, that doesn't mean that the people that control the information are criminals or evil or anything else. They are operating in a system that they didn't necessarily create. It evolved since 1945, primarily in response to the Soviet threat, and secondarily in response to the ET presence. And they created, and what was created was what I call the secret empire. The largest secret complex in history, vast in its scope, vast in its funding, and increasingly removed from political oversight. So, but they didn't necessarily create it. These are people working in it now. But that's what we have. Now, that needs to be reformed, I'm pretty sure. But when that reform takes place, I don't know. I think disclosure, the act of disclosure, is the best path to eventually reforming this vast secret complex so that it's more in line with our democratic principles and our founding constitution. But these are huge issues. But the consequences, let me tell you, of not dealing with these issues are potentially grave. This is not trivial stuff, right?
Right.
We're not talking about, land use rights in Wyoming or whether we should drill offshore or not drill offshore. We're talking about a vast secret empire that has been created, that now spends huge sums of money and operates without oversight, and the formal policy to withhold the acknowledgement of an extraterrestrial presence engaging the entire planet. This is huge stuff. It's so big that for a number of people, they can't see it. It's too big to see.
Yeah, I agree that that's one of the huge issues we have going on right now. People aren't addressing. Washington Post did a big write-up, but it doesn't really seem to be catching on. Is this secrecy out of control? And you talk about how these people are good people, and I totally, although that might not be a popular opinion in this field, I think you're right. These are just normal people like you and I doing a job and working in this world of this secrecy out of control. With the other side, though, and the other possible reasons for secrecy, you had talked earlier about abduction and people having interactions with extraterrestrials. Do you believe in this scenario of the fear of releasing the information because it's too scary, that there's possibly malevolent force and they don't want people to know about this scary situation?
Well, first of all, millions, tens of millions of people know about this situation, right?
But there's a huge difference of opinions as to whether it's an invasion by malevolent people or if it's the oversight by these wiser beings. There's of course a wide variety of opinion that way.
Well, but your original point was that there is abductions going on, there's contact going on, and without getting into motives and parsing that, that's a scary thing, and they don't want to talk about it. Well, again, millions of people every year, more millions of people come to understand that there is contact going on. I mean, books have been written about it, movies have been done about it. It's hardly a secret anymore, so we already know that. And the abduction stories, in many cases, are unsettling. So basically what we have here is the people know, the government denies, so it just makes it that much more frightening. So the idea that, we can't tell the people what they already know because they'll get scared, no, that's silly. In terms of malevolence, look, I use this analogy. The Germans are amassing huge numbers of tanks on the French border, right, and tens of thousands of troops. The French government learns about this, but makes the decision not to inform the French people because they're pretty convinced that the Germans' intentions are malevolent. And so they just let the French people go about their business, and then one day tanks roll in. That's kind of the scenario that's being suggested, that if the ET's intentions are bad, better not tell anybody so we can all just go about our lives until they all show up one day and start herding us into pens to be fed to their pet dog. Ridiculous. I will make the case, and would be happy to make it to any sociology professor at Harvard if they would even deign to have me on the campus, but of course they don't want me 100 miles from that campus. They were incredibly relieved when John Mack was killed by an automobile in London. And one day they're going to pay for their arrogance. Nevertheless, I would make the case that if, in fact, there is malevolent intent upon these extraterrestrials, that is the number one reason why every nation in the world should acknowledge that presence to all 7 billion of us, so we can decide together what we're going to do about it. And take that burden off the backs of the few select individuals who are carrying that burden in the national security structures, who take it to bed every night, right, knowing, oh my God, bad ETs are coming, and only I know about it because we can't tell anybody else. That's nonsense. And so it's time for the government to realize that they serve us, we don't serve them. They work for us, we don't work for them. And anything that concerns our well-being is our right to know. And that the sooner they tell us, the better. And that's a case I'd be happy to make. If somebody in government wants to step forward and make the counter case, well, we can't tell you about the extraterrestrial presence because we do think it would cause a problem, I'd be happy to have that debate. But they're never going to do that. They're never even going to admit there's something that they can't tell. So the whole thing is contained, in other words, Alejandro. It is a self-driving, a perpetuating process of secrecy and denial that leads nowhere, right?
Now,
and so they're trapped
right.
in their own truth embargo, and they can't get out. So we need to reach in with a helping hand and pull them out.
Now, do you think that the scenario may exist, and some people like Nick Pope and John Alexander kind of are in this area, that they believe that a large part of the reason of the secrecy is that they don't know, and they don't want to admit that, we've got these things flying around and these people here, and we don't know what the heck they're doing. Do you believe that they possibly could be in this state of confusion themselves?
Not for 1 millisecond. We know what the citizen scientist movement has been able to determine with no money whatsoever. I mean, the total amount of money that has been spent on ufology since '47, we're probably not even pay the lawn care bills of your typical movie star.
Oh, no.
But given what we have been able to ascertain without government support, with actual government intervention over 60 years, and then consider the government, which has had over those 60 years trillions of dollars of funding, air forces and Navy, satellite systems, radar systems, advanced communications detective systems we don't even know about, huge resources, underground bases, underground facilities. And the idea that, they know even less than we know is utterly absurd. Not to mention the fact that we have documents that indicate they know. We also have witnesses that come forward that indicate they know. And so if someone wants to say, the government figured out, there might be ETs in 1947, but too complicated for them, and so they haven't done a thing about it since then and just left it to the people to do it while they stayed completely ignorant, it's ridiculous. So
Gotcha.
What can I say? I'll buy that for 1 second, and I if John Alexander and I debate again, I'll be happy to discuss that with him.
Gotcha. And although with even these the people in the public, civilian scientists like you're talking about, of course there's a large amount of ideas and opinions. Huge. The gamut is from one end to the other on what may be going on. So it's hard to say anybody's necessarily figured much out, but except for that there is some sort of visitation.
I wouldn't count on that.
Yeah.
There's plenty of evidence for crashed vehicles, numbers of crashes. Roswell was a crashed vehicle. They had bodies, evidence for living bodies. So I think it's quite likely the government has had access to crashed vehicles for 60 years and possibly living extraterrestrials. Gee.
Moving on that. Go ahead.
Alejandro, let me say this. If you want me to tell where I'm going to put my money, I'll put my last dime down on, and I'll give away 100 to 1 odds that the government knows more about this issue than we do.
Yeah. Moving on. I just wanted to ask all this gamut of questions just to get your idea on some of these things. And but getting back to kind of what you've been working on, exopolitics has been really popular, especially around the world. I mean, there's lots of these exopolitics groups popping up. We've had a couple write articles for the magazine. What is exopolitics to you? There are kind of a few different definitions out there. What is it to you, and what do you see, since you're out there among these countries, the appeal and what they're looking for in exopolitics?
Exopolitics is the same as exopolitical science.
Mm-hmm.
It is the political and kind of social implications of this issue and all its manifestations, past, present, and future. What's important about the concept is it's a new language, deliberately created in order to describe a new situation. We're not so much interested in the science of the UFO phenomena. Others are, and they've done a lot of work there. We're interested in the political ramifications, government actions and involvements, future government policies, and so forth. In other words, we're seeking a political resolution. So consequently, we need language appropriate to that. So exopolitics is a term designed to reflect the political engagement of this issue and the disclosure movement. The disclosure movement is simply one part of exopolitics.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much the disclosure movement is exopolitical. Right? That's another way to look at it. The reason it's gaining popularity is because people have figured out that the citizen science effort could not resolve the issue. If the government is going to refuse to acknowledge it, if the government's going to withhold what it knows, if it's going to deny there's anything there, then the citizen science effort is hampered to the point of not being able to resolve the issue. And so consequently, we've got to move to the political area. So for a lot of people, they see in exopolitics and the disclosure movement a real possibility of finally resolving this issue, at least at the initial level, which is the acknowledgement of the ET presence. Once that's done, all doors open up and anything can happen, and a lot will happen. So exopolitics reflects or presents to people a real possibility of actually resolving this issue in their lifetime. And so naturally they're excited about it, and they should be excited about it. That's not to say that science and ufology, whatever you want to call it, is not important. It continues to go on. It will go on. That's fine. And I'm not saying that you stop that. I'm simply saying that it's not enough. That we have to, resolve this political policy, which is what everything that Paradigm Research Group does, whether it's the disclosure petition, whether it's the X conference, whether it's the Million Facts in Washington, everything it does is designed to achieve one goal, and that is disclosure. And another project, which is underway right now that I definitely want to mention, is World Disclosure Day. Now, World Disclosure Day is another referendum underway. It gives people a chance to sign to their interest here. Now, it's not an official government thing, but it is, in fact, a project of PRG. WorldDisclosureDay.org is PRG's effort to get July the 8th acknowledged by the public, not by the government, as the day of the year to address the issue, to speak to it, to hold events and conferences and whatever, just like Earth Day. But what's important is that the way it's set up is that people can go and endorse it. We're trying to get people and organizations to endorse this concept, just like Earth Day. As we get more endorsements, we'll get more media coverage, and this will develop. So these endorsements are listed on the WorldDisclosureDay.org website. Now, we're up to 4,600 endorsements by people and organizations of World Disclosure Day, and that number is going to continue to increase. So there is another opportunity for people to go. Now, in that case, we're posting both first and last name, city, state. So it's a strong signature, right? We're not posting an address. We're not posting an email address. But we're posting first and last name. So right now, PRG is encouraging people to sign the disclosure petition, endorse World Disclosure Day, and share both links with as many people as they can on their Facebook, MySpace, Twitter accounts, and on their email list, and see if we can garnish more and more signed support to this issue, and that will help PRG generate more media coverage.
And everybody can find out about everything you're doing here at the ParadigmResearchGroup.org, correct?
Yes, indeed. Yes,
All
indeed.
right, great, because we are out of time. Of course, that flew like I knew it would, and it feels like it was a couple minutes, but it's already been an hour.
Thanks, Alejandro. I want to mention that I will be speaking in Louisville, Kentucky at the Pythagoras Conference. You can see the link on my sites or Google it. That's December 16 through 18. And could be an important event. So I look forward to seeing people in Louisville. And also there's some more movies coming out. More ET movies are on the way. It never stops. There's new books being published. I certainly encourage people to read AD After Disclosure by Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel. My book hopefully will be coming out early next year if I can sit down long enough in one place and write it.
Cool. I bet a lot of people are looking forward to it.
Thanks.
All right, great. Thank you so much for being on the show. And remember, people, ParadigmResearchGroup.org. All right, thanks. Good luck with the petition. We'll be keeping a very close eye on it, that's for sure.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right. Hopefully you could hear okay. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get Steve to turn off that dang speakerphone, so the sound wasn't as good as I had hoped. But hopefully you still heard everything okay. We are completely out of time. So thank you so much for listening to Open Minds Radio. Listen to us next week. We're going to have another great show. Also, don't forget to visit openminds.tv for more UFO news. Talk to you next week, people.